Roll call, everybody present.
Item 5, special business. Receipt of an oral report relative to the removal of the spoil banks by Lafayette Consolidated Government and the consideration and authorization of the action which St. Martin Parish Government should adopt as a consequence of the removal of the spoil banks.
Mrs. Cedars?
Mr. Chairperson, it's okay, I will address it from the podium since there's I think everybody's here for the same issue, or most everybody's here. So I want to be able to address them and our contact with them as well. I have to concede, really, when I thought about this, I normally outline how I want to start off, and I really couldn't come up with a good way to give you any introductory comments about this particular issue, except something that I've said from day one when I became aware of this project. I'm tired of all the talking points that we've heard about the removal of the spoil banks. I'm tired of hearing about the only area that's going to be affected is the Cypress Island swamp. Those are talking points that are, I believe, designed to mislead people. We're talking about the Cypress Island community. We're talking about the residents of St. Martin Parish. We're talking about homeowners, business owners. We're talking about people that own property and whose lives and life savings are invested in those properties. So it's not a swamp we're talking about, okay? We're talking about a community. We're talking about our citizens and our constituents of this parish, period. Second thing is tired of the talking point. All the removal of spoil banks would do is restore everything to its natural order, to open up God's given natural reservoir. Tired of hearing that. Okay? If that's the case, we'll move every levee that's been built since 1927. Okay? So let's get down to the real facts and the nitty-gritty of what we're talking about. I'm also tired about the spoil banks being placed on the wrong side of the river 70 years ago. Irrelevant, especially relevant to the issues that exist today, if that is indeed the case, and I think it is. Since I had discussions with our consulting engineer on this matter, who's present tonight, Mr. Alex Gilroy with Blue Meat Consultants, after every meeting he's had with other members of our neighbors, members of the Lafayette Consolidated Government, their engineers, when he studied some models that they had prepared, or a model that they had prepared, when we sat down, he's always assured me that there is nothing that gives him any comfort about any potential localized flooding as a result of the spoil banks, localized flooding in our environment, in our neighborhoods, in our property, St. Martin Parish. He's also assured me that the removal of the spoil banks poses zero risk to Lafayette Parish. The only parish with the risk of additional water is St. Martin Parish. And I've made it quite clear since day one that the position of the St. Martin Parish government would be that we would not embrace, adopt, or endorse any project that would enhance any type of water problem for our citizens. That position never changed, and as I stand here today, it still does not change. There's also interconnectivity issues with the removal of those spoil banks with our other canals that run into that area, and I can go on and on. Suffice it to say this, that our objections, our concerns about this project have existed from day one, and they have been communicated with specificity to Lafayette Consolidated Government, period. No ifs, ands, buts about it. Our concerns have been expressed to the United States Army Corps of Engineers on 2 separate occasions in supplemental responses. No question about it. All that's a public record with the Corps. The first was in early May, I think, and the second was sometimes in August, when we issued reports. So, I think it's only fair that the public be aware that we also from day one said, look, we in St. Martin Parish acknowledge that flooding issues is a regional issue. It's a regional matter, and we want to work together with our citizens, our fellow citizens in our neighboring parishes. And we've always done that. this parish, always. We were the first parish probably to articulate the need for regionalized approaches to flooding issues. This parish was the first parish out in August of 2016 that went to the voters, and the voters approved a $20 million bond issue in December of 2016 to address flooding issues on a regional basis. We're the first ones to do it. Okay? So I don't need anybody else telling us that we don't understand regionalized flooding issues. We do. But at the same time, we understand we've got to protect our own constituents and our own citizens and our own people. And that's the only position we've ever taken from day one. Now, we've also had an open mind to cooperate, to meet with, and to discuss any and all projects any other jurisdiction might have. From St. Landry to Iberia to St. Mary to Lafayette. To Vermilion. We've never failed to sit down and address issues for prospective projects. As a matter of fact, we had meetings, many meetings with Lafayette Consolidated Government on this very same issue. So make no mistake about it, we have approached this with an open mind, but also with an understanding that our priority are our own constituents and our own citizens and our own property. Period. Make no mistake about that. We first learned, and I don't want to go over the whole history. In December of 2010, there was a meeting in these chambers where a presentation was made about the potential of the removal of the spoiled banks. And, you know, my position after that meeting was articulated, I think with a great deal of clarity. It was just what I said before. At that time, it was conceptual only. As things evolved, and I won't go over every detail because they're quite lengthy, but I will say this, that in March 18th of 2021, I received a telephone call from the Chief Administrative Officer of Lafayette Parish telling me that he had received a quote no-rise certificate. At that point in time, I had our Director of Public Works contact the Public Works Department of Lafayette Consolidated Government and learned that there had been a model or a study of the small banks we were conducting. Guess what we did? We requested a copy of it. We wanted to look at it. That was in March, excuse me. In April 5th, 2021, we had one of our regular engineering firms, together with our Director of Public Works, meet with LCG officials, seeking data and information about the proposed project, or the conceptualized project at this time. Nothing forthcoming. April 13th, there was a meeting. It was not a project at that time. In fact, it was stated in a conversation I had with the Chief Administrative Official that much more data is needed. April 2021, April 13th. Well, I'm going to flash forward to April 29th, 2021, when I was invited to appear at a neighborhood meeting in the Cypress Island community. And for the first time, I walked up to that meeting. Guess what I learned? Much data being needed. On that date, I learned for the first time that an application had been made to the United States Army Corps of Engineers for a permit to remove the spoiled banks at the very site where they were ultimately removed. And I think I see a lot of faces in the audience that were at that meeting when we learned it for the first time that night. And we learned it from a Corps representative. Now, I wasn't too happy with the Corps at that point, but now as things have evolved, I can understand why we did not know. When I expressed my chagrin over that, I was told, oh, you'll get a copy of all the models upon which that application was premised. That was in April 29th. Well, our first response was to file a detailed objection to the project that was vetted by me, and more importantly, vetted by our Director of Public Works. And let me concede this. Shortly thereafter, you will recall this, members of the council, I recruited an attorney, a law firm that represents, and I wanted an attorney on board as soon as possible to give me some guidance in case we would ultimately need legal guidance in this matter. We ultimately retained that law firm on May 26, 2021, and started working with us, accumulating some data, and determining what our steps should be to make sure that all of our people were fully protected in case things didn't work out. I had a meeting, official, with our Director of Public Works, official from Lafayette Consolidated Government on May 7, 2021. And shared with them my objections to the way this whole matter has been handled surreptitiously. And I didn't give you the steps of what had occurred in October of 2020. Not necessarily to go that far back. But I was told at that meeting that we would have, for the first time, all the data upon which the application to the court had been based. And that model, quote unquote, was delivered to our office, I think it was a Friday afternoon, May 27, 2021. After we received that model, it was given to Blue Wing Consultants for them to start reviewing the matter. And it's not as simple just looking at a few pages. So our own evaluation of that proposed project, the removal of the spoil banks, commenced. Meanwhile, on August 26, 2021, I received notification from the United States Army Corps of Engineers that Lafayette Consolidated Government has split their application for a permit into two components, so to speak. One dealt with the removal of the spoil banks on what's called the Blanchet site. The other was for work at a site called the Shockley site. Instead of the initial application was for one permit for both, now they say we want to segregate. Well, we sent them a response, sent them being the Corps response saying, that's good. We still opposed to removing those spoil banks until a complete total study was done to demonstrate that the removal of those spoil banks would what? Have no enhanced risk to the people of St. Martin Parish. Made it quite clear in that response. I also did something else in that response. I sent the Corps a copy of an ordinance, which we adopted in July of 2021. And you remember what that ordinance said? It said anybody that wanted to remove any kind of structure, man-made or not, i.e. a levee, i.e. a spoil bank, needed to come before this parish council with an H&H study demonstrating no harm would be done in the St. Martin Parish, and this council would determine whether to grant the permit. That's what that ordinance said. We amended our floodplain ordinance. So I made sure the Corps knew about that ordinance when I responded to that August 26th request to divide the permit into two phases. September 27, 2021, received notification from the Corps. The notification from the Corps on that date said essentially, not essentially, it said directly, Lafayette Consolidated Government has withdrawn its application for a permit for the Blanchet site, i.e. the removal of the spoil banks. October 14, 2021, we had a meeting right here in this room, and there was a group of people from LCG. Mr. Courville, our Director of Public Works, was present at that meeting, and they were saying, you know, we've done some extra modeling. We've done some additional studies. So why don't you reconsider your position? I said, give us the data you've done. Give us the modeling you've done, and we'll look at it. And then I was asked to explain at that meeting precisely what our objections were. I said, I'll tell you what, don't listen to some old retired has-been lawyer. Let's get the engineers in one room and let them talk about it so that the technical aspects can be completely, totally, and absolutely vetted. They agreed. December 13th, 2021, a meeting took place in Lafayette. Our Director of Public Works, the engineer, Blue Wing Consultants, Mr. Alex Gilbert, and the engineers from Lafayette Consolidated Government. And at that point in time, it was agreed that the additional modeling, the additional studies that had been done would be given to us to look at. Am I correct, gentlemen?
That's correct. That meeting was here.
All right. So, guess what? The next development was, it was about 3 o'clock 1 week ago today, I learned that the spoil banks had been removed. And let me be frank with you. I said I would give a full candid disclosure. The first call we made was to the Chief Administrative Officer of Lafayette Consolidated Government. Left a message for him to return my call. Meanwhile, the second call I made, together with our Director of Public Works, was to Jeffrey Barasco with the United States Army Corps of Engineers. And was assured for the umpteenth time, one, permit was necessary, two, no permit had been issued. Okay. I got a call, return call, from Mayor President Lafayette Parish about 5 p.m. that day. Very short conversation. Did you remove the spoil banks? Hesitation, then response, yes I did. But it's good for your people too. I don't need anybody in Lafayette telling me it was good for someone in Parish.
I know that old boy, that thing is a snake.
My second response was, why the hell didn't you tell me? Why didn't you pay me to curse? Well, I guess I should have. I'm sorry about that. Take that off. Never mind. That happened. No use to get involved in my siblings at that point. So, learned about that Tuesday afternoon. Made the necessary phone calls. The following morning, after I didn't sleep that night, trying to figure out what the hell had happened, we learned that LCG had acquired the property on which the spoil banks were removed, or a fractional interest in the property. And look, I'm just going to state a fact, and I'm going to let you, members of the council, draw your own conclusion. Those two sales, fractional interest, I still think it's an outstanding fractional interest that was not transferred to LCG, is by sale dated February 21, 2022. Both of them. And both those sales were recorded, put in the courthouse in St. Martin Parish, made public records. Before this, they were not a public records. That occurred on March 9th, the day after I learned of the spoil bank removal. I don't know what that means precisely, but I don't think it's too good. Of course, approximately noon that day, after I had a conversation, I invited the chairperson to my office. Those of you who recall this, we made a call to our attorneys. Of course, I had alerted them of the situation. And I don't want to get into our discussions because it gets into an attorney-client privilege, but it was basically, what do you need to mediate this issue, John? And what is it we need to do it as quickly as we possibly can? And we've been in constant contact with them over the weekends. I had several conversations with them, email exchanges. Other calls that we made calls to the Corps again. I kept saying, what did we miss? There's no Corps permit issued. How can that be? We have been assured time and time again that a Corps permit is necessary and that no Corps permit's been obtained. What about our ordinance? We're sovereign too. I know our ordinance. No permit was requested from this council. There was an interview on KPL Radio. I invite you to go. It happened on Thursday morning. I was giving a presentation to Lake Charles. I didn't hear it live, but I've been sent several copies of that interview of the Mayor President of Lafayette Consolidated Government. It speaks volumes about this situation. And you don't need any commentary from me on that. All right, we get up here and we talk all day. My wife fussed at me because I made a comment to the paper that I didn't think we need to set on our posterior. I used another word. We want to do something to make this, to remediate this issue. I want to assure this council, I want to assure this public, we're not going to sit on our rear ends. We're going to take action to remediate this problem. And I've got some very specific recommendations I want to make to you, the council, tonight. One, I recommend that you authorize me to continue to pursue litigation, or to commence the pursuit of litigation, and listen closely, against every single person, firm, or entity that may have been complicit in the surreptitious removal of those fall banks. Every single person. That just doesn't mean LCG votes. Okay? Second recommendation I'll ask you to adopt is that we demand a full, thorough, public investigation by every single regulatory agency that has been impacted by the removal of those fall banks. When I say impacted, I mean whose regulations have been violated. That includes the United States Army Corps of Engineers, the Environmental Protection Agency, DEQ, DNR, and FEMA. Everyone My final recommendation is that we request from our United States congressional delegation a full inquiry into what happened and why, and what guarantees can be given to us that it will not happen again. Final recommendation, I'm not sure where, I don't want to make this recommendation now, but it was suggested to me by a Corps representative that there was a potential for an independent study by the Corps of the effects of the removal of the small banks. Well, I'm vetting that. I'm not willing to make a recommendation one way or the other because it has been vetted already by us. So maybe see why we need to kick a can more than once. Now, in the face of litigation, what remedies can we get? I'd love to get up here and tell everybody, oh, we're going to take care of this next week at the over. Ain't going to happen, okay? And anybody tells you will's lying in terms of getting remedies, getting relief. But I certainly believe that one element that we ought to seek in any litigation is the restoration of those fall banks. One way or the other.
Yes.
I want to give anybody important legal advice to anybody. But any flooding that occurs as a consequence of the removal of those fall banks is subject to being recovered, any damages, in separate litigation. It's a concept called inverse condemnation in law. Again, I'm not going to get involved in the law. But one public entity cannot do harm to private property. It's a taking without due process. And when you ignore a regulatory process, I think you're ignoring due process. Now, I understand there's allegations being made that no Corps permits were required. Let me think about that. In April, you're applying for a Corps permit. In August, you're trying to split the Corps permit into two components. And in September, you're withdrawing the permit. Now, when it comes in March of 2022, you're removing a wild permit. I can't figure that out. Maybe somebody will explain it to me in the course of the litigation. Okay? And I'm not drawing conclusions. I'm just stating facts. Of course, the effects of this, as I view them, as your parish president, are far-reaching. The most vivid effect, the most pressing effects is potential danger to our residents. No question about that. And I don't want to make light of that. But see, the effects go further than that. It's kind of like a rock throwing a pond. You know, you have a splash and all these waves. Let me tell you what some of those waves are. Can somebody tell me how someone Parish can have comfort in dealing with this neighbor again? That there can be no trust. And what about this idea of a regionalized approach to flooding issues? It takes two to dance. It takes two to love. It takes one to destroy that corporation. Am I concerned? Yeah. I understand how a public body can get frustrated when they're trying to do a project that helps people, or helps the residents. None of you understand that frustration, because we've been living with it since 2017. Remember those $20 million worth of bonds? Remember, we had projects that we identified. We had projects that we planned. And we had to go through a core permitting procedure that was a pain, and the very thing that we're not going to set on in connection with what's happening to us. Okay? But guess what we did? We followed the rules. Now we've got dirt being thrown. Albeit belated, at least we followed the process. If we have no process, we have to do. How many times have I said that? Mr. Alexander made a comment several months ago. I told him I said, good idea. His idea was, maybe we ought to build some levees all the way down to the river. You know, the same way. I think it might have been right. Everybody got to meet them. Anyway, look, I don't want to make this a production. You get excited over things. There was a radio show that a person was being interviewed. This individual, I don't think knew anything about it that took place, although I think this individual is a proponent of removal of small vegetables. He made a comment that he thought that St. Martin's perhaps being a crybaby because some things had been done and we weren't told they were being done. This was back in June. So somebody sent me a tape of that interview. I'll do it aside. Let me tell you something. I've never acted any kind of personal opinion or any kind of personal vendetta. My decisions have been based on fact. My decisions have always been very methodical. And every one of these people who work with me, they get aggravated with me because I'm very methodical. And I got to be convinced before I take action. And this is why, we just not followed the suit yesterday. Because you see, there's a lot of facts. And I want to make sure we got all the facts. I want to make sure that when we allege something, we're big enough to allege it. I want to make sure we're big enough to prove it. So we're going to go through a process. We're going to get all this facts. And as far as those comments that we're being crybabies, no. We're being good stewards and representatives of our people. And I will continue to do so. It's not a personal thing with me. And if I thought it got to the point, if we'd ever get to the point where it'd be personal, I'd step up on this job in a heartbeat. Because I don't need it. All right? But my obligation is to protect the rules and regulations of this parish. You pass a rule, I'm going to enforce it. If somebody wrongs this parish, while I'm at the helm, I'm going to seek remediation. So, Mr. Chairman, you've heard my recommendations. One, I'll be allowed to continue to pursue litigation with dispatch, ASAP, making sure we got the facts, against any and all persons, firms, or entities that may have been complicit in the removal of those faults. Two, full, that you accept my recommendation that a full investigation by all regulatory agencies implicated in this matter be conducted publicly, and that we be advised of those findings, and that whatever remediation and penalties are associated therewith be imposed to the maximum. And thirdly, we call upon our congressional delegation to do a complete analysis, study, and investigation of why this happened and what can be done to ensure it won't happen again. And I ask for that authority to be my motion.
Thank you, Mr. Cedars. At this time, I need a motion and a second to approve the recommendations of Vice President Cedars. I got a motion by Mr. Forty. I request a unanimous second. Everybody, unanimous second. Okay, I'm not having any requests to speak forums. Does anybody from the council have any comments or anything to say? Ms. Forty?
I'd like to thank everyone right now for coming out and, listening to what's going on and showing your interest. And that's one thing, this council and Mr. Cedars, we're gonna fight till the end, and hopefully, we can get this resolved. But y'all, this, might take a little time, but we're gonna fight this to the end, and I think the outcome will be good. And I just wanna thank y'all for coming out. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Mr. Benson?
Yes, sir. Also, I just want to add in that in case the insurance carrier, once the information got out there, they may want to either increase your premium or drop your policy. And if that happens, you gotta know, you probably need to let us know something, because it's probably gonna happen. Okay, that's it, but when they do, please let us know. Okay?
Anyone else? Council? Public? Mr. Malone?
I just want to say, Mr. Cedars said we're going to follow the facts and not make it personal. But it's hard not to make it personal when you have something so deliberate, calculated, devious, arrogant, pompous, you need not to make it personal. And not, like we said, we were joking over the weekend, but even Ukraine knew that Putin was coming. We didn't even know that it was coming. So, made it personal in some ways.
It's kind of what Mr. LeBron just said there. I'm on my 7th year serving in this council, and I work pretty close with Lafayette Parish. I've had just people here tonight from different associations from there. We worked on basin projects and worked with St. Andrew Parish real close, and we've always thought about our neighbor. We've never done anything to hurt anybody, or we never will do anything to hurt anybody. The Jodea Canal project we're doing right now is done solely on our taxpayers' dollars. It's going to benefit Lafayette Parish as much as it's going to benefit us. This parish has always took us a step to work with our neighboring parishes and to try to work with them. Mr. Cedars is right. It's hard to trust right now, but I just want our neighboring parishes to know Iberia, St. Landry. I mean, we can continue to work with those people and continue to have the bond we've had in the past. But I want the people of Cypress Island to know that this council will stand with Mr. Cedars on everything he wants to do. He's got our full support. You all have our full support. Anything we can do, this council is open to you. At this time, I want to call for the vote.